If you've had a pretty difficult and complicated childhood that was filled with traumatic events, and especially if you're a woman, you've dealt with pretty misogynistic experiences, what you'll find as a creative is that those experiences greatly influenced you as an artist. My personal experience is that the negative events I lived impaired my ability to create, as they had an influence on my energy levels. It's kind of hard to create something if you can barely get out of bed. Kind of hard to pick up an instrument in those situations, and also kind of hard to even afford to buy an instrument if it's inaccessible to you. And a lot of us as creatives don't have problems when it comes to the mental creation of something. I remember when I was a child, even if I didn't have the resources to create, I never owned an instrument back then, but my mind was constantly wandering, and I didn't even need, an elaborate input in order to make my mind wander. I remember my grandma had this sort of marble pavement in her house, and I remember just staring at the patterns of that marble on the floor and seeing like figures and making up stories about them. So that's how little input I really needed at that time. So I've always been a deeply creative person. My mind has always wandered. I have always had this hyperactive mind. But as we are a social species, having a hyperactive mind might not be enough to make yourself be seen as a creative. You need to translate that idea, that mental wandering, into some sort of physical product. You have to choose your medium, whether that's the written word, the spoken word, music, or some sort of visual art. You need to find a way to translate your idea, to sort of bring it from the mental realm to the physical realm, so that other people can resonate with it, so that you yourself can touch it and hold it in your hands and really rejoice in the process of the creative act. However, this process of translation, this physical translation, isn't necessarily easy. In fact, it's the hardest possible path. It's not easy to move from the mental and emotional world to the physical one. Personally, I've always felt more connected to the mental realm. I have always found some fundamental disconnect between me and the physical reality. I have always felt somewhat like an alien, like I didn't truly fit into the outside world, but I felt I had a place when it came to my fantasy worlds. I didn't feel out of place then. And so I'm in my 20s now, and I decided that what truly makes me happy, what truly makes me fulfilled, is the creative act. I tried pursuing more traditional career paths, but that didn't work out quite well for me. In fact, I always felt like there was something missing. And that something was being able to be creative, being able to be your own boss, to be your own leader. And I am no entrepreneur. I don't have that sort of mindset or whatever. I'm not interested in finance, that sort of word. I am only interested in beauty. I am interested in creation. I am interested in music. I am interested in film. I am interested in literature, writing, reading. However, when you've dealt with certain experiences, connecting with the artist in you, let's say, can be exceptionally hard. There are many limiting beliefs that you will find in your head, and they may not be as apparent as you might think. They might be more subconscious. You might be less aware of them, but they are there, and they have an incredible influence on what you're able to do and also what you're able to think. If you're a woman, and especially when you're a child, so during your childhood, you are at a higher risk of going through certain traumatic experiences, mainly SA, with all the other events that characterize it. And there are some factors that can either protect you from developing PTSD and other traumatic responses, or other risk factors that can impact your health even further. Isolation and invalidation, when you do try to reach out, if you do try to reach out, are the main risk factors. And this pain, this struggle, is, I think, a poison to the artist. We have this very weird rhetoric around artistry, and that is that if you struggle hard enough, then you will become a great writer, a great artist, because struggle makes you more inspired and more creative. But that is so not true in my experience. Struggle is a poison to the artist. I was reading David Lynch's Catching the Big Fish the other day, and this is an incredible book, and he also talks about this stereotype surrounding the artist. And in this book, he basically said, it's a direct quote, let your characters do the suffering. Because, this pain, the struggle is very inspiring in a story, but it is poison to the artist, as you need order and stillness and clarity in order to create. You need some sort of quiet, tranquil place in order to create. And so healing is a really important path. And I call it path because I don't think it's ever ending. I don't think it's linear. I think there are many events in our lives that can either hinder it, impact it, and sometimes you have the impression that you're healed, then something happens and you're back to old habits. It's not linear. That's an illusion. It's not linear. And a big part of the healing process, if you're a creative person, is going back to what pleasures you, going back to what gives you joy, what gives you fulfillment. And there's only so much journaling can do. Getting back into action is a really important step. Action and setting up goals for yourself and reaching them are things that really build up your confidence as a person in general, not just as an artist. And the other thing that also helps incredibly is being outspoken, is reaching out, is limiting your isolation. And this is partly why I'm filming this, because speaking isn't exactly the kind of thing I do too often, especially not about certain topics, especially not offline, because paradoxically, what I learned is that it's way easier to talk about certain topics with people you don't know and you will never meet, rather than speaking about these things with your own family or with the people that surround you in your everyday life. And maybe it's not so paradoxical at all, because a stranger might come up to you and say something invalidating, but you won't give it the time of day necessarily because you don't know that person and you don't have any emotional attachment to that person. Whereas if you talk about something important to someone that is close to you and they invalidate you, that's different. That's completely different. You will fear their disapproval way more than the disapproval of a stranger. And in this day and age, I think social media can be a really great tool for us. A great tool for people who are otherwise isolated and ostracized from society. We talk about the downsides of social media all the time. We say that social media is, the perfect place for bullying and all sorts of crimes, and it's a dangerous place to live in. But look at the offline world. Is it really that better? The answer is no. There is a reason why people come on social media, and there is a reason why people get hooked on social media. And that is because they often find a source of connection and an opportunity to resonate with other people that they might not have offline, because certain topics, certain conversations are hardly had in real life. Because as much as we think SA and pedophilia, I'm not even sure if I can say that word, but that's what we're talking about here. They're really hard topics, and we might see them more discussed on social media than offline. There's a reason for that. And so if you're a nobody, if you're not an Apple baby, and if you want to pursue an artistic path, social media and the opportunity to reach people who might be in your same condition might be really helpful. And so that's why I'm filming this. This is my first talked video ever. I'm not even sure if there will be others. I am speaking in a language that is not my own. My first language is in English. And there's a reason why I'm not making this video in my own language, and it's because I frankly hate the people of my country. Like, obviously not all of them. There are good people in my country, but you get what I mean. And also, when you speak English, you have the opportunity to reach other people without the burden of the language barrier, basically. This freedom that social media gives you is also the exact freedom you need as an artist. Because in order to create something that is of value, you need to get rid of the fear of other people disapproving of you, of the fear of being misinterpreted, the fear of being invalidated. You have to let your projects really consume you and express themselves fully, entirely, without any sort of constraint being put on them. It's harder when you've been raised in a way that prioritized you being silent and complacent. That's what women are raised like in most cultures. To be silent, to be agreeable, to be non-existent, basically. That's all it is. And obviously you can create in that place, because if you think you're so unfit to be seen, and why would you even create something? Creating something means putting yourself out there, potentially being critiqued, potentially upsetting someone, potentially making someone else uncomfortable. And that is obviously a no-no for women. How dare you make someone feel uncomfortable? Even if the person themselves made you uncomfortable first, how dare you make them feel uncomfortable as well? How they return that energy. But you need to upset someone, you need to disturb someone, you need to make someone feel uncomfortable. That's art for you. You deserve to have a space. You deserve to make your voice heard. You deserve to ask for more. You deserve to have community. There is no one like you. There is no one who lived the same experiences as you did. And I was speaking about CSA earlier, but my experience, even if shared by millions of people worldwide, isn't necessarily the same as the others. As I said, there are many factors that impact that first event that can either mitigate it or make it worse. So there's intersectionality there, like your gender, your sexual orientation, your culture, your socioeconomic background, the education of your parents, your own level of education. There are many, many things that impact your health after a traumatic event. But you need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of your healing path if you want to create. And that's what I wish on everybody. I wish healing. I wish freedom and prosperity and abundance. And that's all there is. May you set yourself free. May you speak about the things you've never spoken about.